This show is sponsored by the ComX shop. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to Tuesday Chinwag. It's good to see Tim is actually frozen. We've been sitting in the green room and everything's been all good, and now he's frozen up. So you got me at least. So what am I doing here? I'm sorry to disappoint. So there was a cyclone in Townsville. Now, Townsville is where Leigh Chalker lives. So Helen Hunt was on the scene. There was a cow seen flying through the air. I don't really know the difference between cyclones, tornadoes, twisters, nor'easters, but the internet fell prey to said wind, and Leigh did me the honor, oh golly, of letting me host his show. So what is Chinwag, you might ask, because this is the first show for the year. So Chinwag is a show, obviously, where we talk comics. You sit down with an illustrator, a writer, a creator in some form or fashion, and we talk about their career, talk about their comic books, talk about all manner of whatnots, and it's based around 6 prompting questions: who, what, when, why, how, and where. For instance, like, where is my guest? So firstly, thank you, Gary. Welcome back to Chinwag. I do apologize that Leigh's not here. As you can see, the one comic on my brand spanking new shelves is I'm getting a text message from Tim. Are we down already? No, just click the link. It's all good. Look, I've got it, mate. I've got it. Like, nah, just click the link and join back in. Join bacon. Hopefully he knows what that means. So few things to get underway. So we are brought to you, obviously, by ComX. ComX.shop, where you can buy all sorts of Australian indie comic books, available right now with a flat shipping rate. They also come quite flat in the package, which is a bonus when ordering comic books. Curly comic books are not a desired thing that I know about. Right. Also, we are streaming live on Aussieverse. So you must be super confused as to what's going on right now if you are tuning in on Aussieverse. Where's Bo? Where's Leigh Chalker? Where's Tim? Holy schmamolies. We do encourage questions, so please hit us up with questions. Tim says, nah, my net is actually down. Must be trying to catch crabs. Little does he know I've already caught some, if you know what I mean. Bloody hell, mate. So he said to give him a sec, so I'm going to do that. So shout out here to Quick Nick. Hope you're doing well. I miss you. We will see you, my friend, this Friday as Drink and Draw returns. We will be sitting down with Peter Wilson and a bunch of other cool cats, and we will be drawing devils and demons to fit with Peter Wilson's Foes Kickstarter campaign that is cracking at the moment. So tune in for that. That's on Friday, and I promise there will be more people on the screen than just me. Whoa. I was worried that people would tune in to Chinwag and think, wow, Spedsy's just taking over the show. I at least thought I'd have Tim with me to carry some of that weight so it wouldn't look like I'm totally just taking the show for myself. But he is on his way. Am I back? He said. I'm not. It dropped out again. Hang on. All right. Well, you know, they don't call me Dracula for nothing, mate, because I've been known to vamp. Yeah. All right. Gary, thank you. Yes, I need all the help I can get at the moment. Love to Leigh. Have a good one, Spedsy and Tim. I don't know who this Tim is that you refer to, Nick. But we will find out. Ben Sullivan. Ben, this is a page from a comic book that you and I co-created with Ryan Vella and the man, Leigh Chalker. And this is a page here done by Dave Dye. So, my new shelving unit, it's got two of, it's a fair whack of shelves for two things, but, we'll get there. A bookshelf of good taste. I like that little, personalization at the end there. Goodness me, the camera loves you, Spedsy. Tell me about the white backdrop. Yes, because at this point, I've got to tell you about something. So I am in my garage. It was a garage. Now it is called the watermelon room. We do not harvest watermelons here. But when asked my 7-year-old son, I said, what should we call this room? Because I don't want to call it the garage room. He said, call it the watermelon room. So this is my new space for this sort of whatnots. Sis said, do you want me to hop in? Well, Sis, thankfully, I've got a few more comments to get through. But if you see me start crying, then... All right. Just do some juggling or something in the meantime, says Tim. So I was nervous going into tonight's show. And really now that my greatest fears have come true, it's not as scary as I thought. It's pretty scary. But we're going to get there. Dan May, with a $20 super chat. Just drop. No, I wish I watch a streamer who gets $20 super chats. If we could click the button that gets that back cracking, I'll sit here all night long. Dan, good to see you. I do promise you a show of some sort. This might be it. The weirdest chinwag in history. Andrew Law, amazing artist. Yay, drinking and drawing. Yes, sir. We are back in action this Friday. Can't wait to dust off the cobwebs. If there was any cobwebs, I've definitely, well, look, ain't no spiders on me. Tim has gone to Greener Pastures. Yes, unfortunately, I've just got the text. Tim has died. No, Tim has just messaged me. I'm so sorry. Not as sorry as you will be, Tim, because you've got a lot of talking to do when you get here. All right, next up, Facebook user. Just dropping a quick FU. Get it? Facebook user. This looks like the Invisible Man's book collection. Yes, I do have a lot of comic books. Right now, they are all stacked in piles. Speaking of piles, I am sitting on 2 cushions because, well, I've been known to grab some piles. Anyway, come for the McEwen, stay for the Spedsy. Please actually stay for the McEwen because I believe he is switching routers on and off. Someone has clicked the thing. Holy moly. Holy moly. All right, I'm going to click it. Like big shoes to fill tonight, right? That I had to fill Leigh's shoes. I didn't realize I'd have to fill Leigh's shoes and the guests' shoes.
Oh, man, I'm so sorry. You know what I forgot? I forgot that Telstra just turns off my internet every night at 6:31.
Oh.
Every night at 6:31 if we're watching some 8:31. 8:31.
I was going to say, because it's 8:40 right now. So.
If we're watching something streamed, it just cuts out for like sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes 5. Looks like tonight it was nearly 10. I'm so sorry. And as soon as it cut out, I'm going, oh, what's happened wrong? Like something's gone wrong. And then I remember. Anyway,
Well, look, my worst nightmare came true, and it wasn't that bad. We made it through. We only lost 4 viewers in the meantime, but we're still in double digits. We're all right.
All right. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. It's fine. I'll change my pants later. This cushion, it is an heirloom, but I'll air it out later. All right. So, Tim, if you didn't know, this show is beautifully helmed normally by Leigh Chalker, who asks 6 prompting questions. Well, he says 5, but no, he says 6 and then listed 5. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Who, what, where, when, why, how, where, who, what? Did I get them all? I'm not sure. But Tim, I said your name. Pretend I didn't. Who?
Am I?
Yeah, that's how he starts it. He says,
"Got ya."
Who?
Cool. I'm Tim. I'm Tim McEwen. And if I'm to elaborate, I'm the co-creator of Greener Pastures, an Australian comic book, which is actually celebrating its 30th birthday in about a week's time.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. I'm also a storyboard artist and an educator. Sometimes I'm a graphic designer, all sorts of things like that. So is that enough of a who?
Yeah, but I'm going to delve a little bit deeper. Give us, what did your dad do? What was your dad's line of work?
He was an accountant, and he didn't want me to be an artist, which is why I'm sometimes a graphic designer, because he wanted me to have a real job, and art was not a real job. And the closest art job that we could think of, or he and my mum could think of, the closest real job to art was being a graphic designer. So I guess that's why I studied to be a graphic designer. A job I never really liked and was not really that suited for, or wasn't really that good at. That's why I don't do too much of it now, and why I was always looking for a job that was adjacent to graphic design, not actually graphic design.
Yeah. What about, did your parents support your comic habit? Did drawing come first, or comics come first, as in like collecting and reading comics?
Yeah, good question. I think drawing came first because we're always scribbling, right? From as soon as you can hold some kind of implement that will make a mark, as a baby and a toddler, you're pretty much drawing immediately. So drawing must have come first. But comics came very early, and I can't even remember. I can't remember far enough back to when I didn't have comics. I think some of my earliest memories include me and my comics. So they came pretty early, and I probably can't put my hands on them right now. But my mum just recently, because she's decluttering her house, found some of my old drawings from like kindergarten, maybe earlier. And even then, they were storytelling. They were kind of cool because I can still remember all of my obsessions. I used to go through phases of obsessions with my drawing, and one of them was spies, and that lasted a long time. That lasted like kind of ebbed and flowed throughout, like probably well over a decade. But I think it was probably watching Get Smart on television. But drawing a spy car with all of these gadgets, you know, like James Bond's car, like has tacks that fall out the side and a flamethrower and blah, blah, blah. So a car like that drawn in profile, because you know how when you're young, everything's kind of in profile.
Or when you're 46. Yeah.
Every gadget was operating all at once, right? Because I had to show what all the gadgets were. So already it's kind of like, this is what this vehicle is all about. And then if you turn the page over, it's like, that's the before, and then this is the after, and the car has crashed into a wall, and the guy is kind of like maybe dead, I suppose, dead on the ground behind it, and all the gadgets are all over the place and fire. And but there were a couple of other bits and pieces, other pages that also had drawings that were never like a standalone drawing. There was always a series, or and either that series were like I went through a phase like where I was drawing my hand or a body or whatever, and I would draw my hand and I would draw all the skin and the nails and the wrinkles, and then I would redraw it and I'd draw all the bones instead, and then I'd redraw it and I'd draw what I thought would be the veins. So again, a series of drawings, wasn't just a single kind of drawing. So that kind of sequential drawings probably predated even having comics. So I'm only putting these jigsaw pieces together in the last couple of years, really. That because if you're into comics, is it's like that saying about being in I guess it's the mafia, is it? You can't ever get out. Once you think you're out, they drag you back in, and we often say that when we're talking about comics and Australian comics. Anyone who's been in it for any kind of length of time, it's kind of like you just never seem to be able to get out. You're always, you can't escape it. You always want to make them or read them or draw them or something. And it's interesting to see that really even predates probably my knowledge of what comics were, that I was already drawing in that kind of sequence. I was just talking to my mum the other day about about the fact that I was probably 1 year too old for the class I was in at school, so I was always bored at school, right? I should have been 1 year below, so I was a bit more challenged, or 1 year ahead, so I was a bit more challenged. And I said I can remember sitting in class in year one with a little notebook, probably a little diary or something from my dad that was a year out of date, so he didn't need it anymore, and using that to draw on. And drawing the Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space, and page after page drawing it flying through space and then crash landing on the planet, because that's what happens every second episode of Lost in Space, and people coming out. So again, sequential drawings, which could almost be animated, because again, everything's kind of in profile and it just kind of moves along. It's not, you don't really think too much about composition like we do now, about camera or viewing angles and stuff. So yeah, again, in year one, drawing, I don't know if I knew that they were comics, but drawing sequential illustrations one after the other. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So my next thing was pets and kids, because I was like, in the Who, like, what makes you up? So that was your dad answer. So we got pets, we got kids. What's the situation there?
Yeah, the cat was actually here before. She's not here now. So that's Boots. Boots lives here. She used to live next door. She was, until the people next door had to move, and they couldn't take their cats, and they didn't want to. They knew the cats were visiting us a lot anyway, and they were very young cats. So we adopted Boots and Pig. There's Boots now. Just in front of you. Well done, Boots.
Where were you 20 minutes ago, Boots? I could have talked to anybody. It would have been.
And Boots' sister Pig is just buried over there. She didn't last as long as Boots has, unfortunately. Poor Pig. Pig was the dumb one. And
now, Pig was a cat.
Both of them are cats. Yeah, they're sisters.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pig the cat. Yeah. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. No. Hey, that makes sense. My dog's called Horse, so
we've all got. Your dog's called Horse, like the
It's not, Tim. It's not.
It's not, okay.
He has a very regular name. His name's Leo, but anyway. We'll edit that out in post. It'll be fine.
Okay. Leo's a lion's name. Anyway. Okay. But next door's first cat, Maggie, she was the first resident on this street, and I think probably the first resident in the suburb, because it's a reasonably new suburb. And she used to visit me a lot, and she was 21 when she died. Beautiful old cat that would be cranky, but in winter would sit on my lap right here where I'm sitting now. And Sally next door never let the cat into her house, but the cat was in our house all the time. Maggie.
Yes.
We kind of had all of the cats from next door, but Boots officially lives here. Maggie never did. So that's the animal situation. The two kids, Samuel and Annabelle, they don't live here anymore. They're too old to live with mum and dad now. So, Samuel works for the ABC. Has been working for Good Game for all of last year. Worked for Triple J before that. Annabelle just finished her master's at the National Art School, master's in printmaking. And I'm sure we're going to talk about Greener Pastures #8 later, but they both contributed to a page to that. Samuel makes comics on a pretty regular basis. Annabelle does printmaking and freaks out anytime I ask her to make comics because it's not really her wheelhouse.
My son Carter is killing it at Minecraft, so I just didn't want to,
my son Samuel's killing it at Minecraft too. Just because he works for the ABC doesn't
let me have that one at least. All right.
Annabelle helped me print these the other day. Tote bags.
Wicked.
Tote bags, because
like
she works
like old school screen printing.
Yeah. Check out the Facebook page. There's a video of a time lapse of us doing it. She helped, and Anne Marie, my wife, helped, and I did a little bit of it too. So yeah.
Well, that should, I guess, lead us into what. So I feel like we've successfully done who. So let's try what. Because we are here to talk. Yeah, like when you went on before, and I was like, what was I thinking when I said to Leigh I would do this? No, so Greener Pastures co-created. Is that correct? Michael, I want to say a last name that I can't pronounce.
Michelandos.
There you go.
Yep.
So for those that don't know, let's talk about the Trevor Bovis of it all. Where did he come from? Also, just because I want to get it said so that we make sure we tackle it, because I think it'd be really interesting. Releasing comics in the 80s versus releasing comics in the 2020s, I imagine completely different. So I'd like to sort of talk about Trevor then and Trevor now, but also Tim making Trevor comics then and Tim making Trevor comics now. What's changed, all that sort of stuff. So tell us about him.
Yeah, that's a pretty wide kind of ranging thing. Look, we'll start with where Greener Pastures came from. So like I said, we're celebrating 30 years of publishing the Greener Pastures comic, but the Greener Pastures IP, characters, etc., is actually even a few years older than that, because Michael and I did the comic as a comic strip for his university newspaper for a year, about 3 or 4 years before we rejigged it and redrew it for a comic book. So it's even older than 30 years. But yeah, Michael and I met at the first Australian comic convention that I've ever been to. Hi, Stephen. Yeah, I will get to that. That's one of my favorite stories, actually. So yeah, Michael and I met at a comic convention at the Sydney Opera House. Stan Lee was supposed to come and didn't turn up, but Jim Steranko and Will Eisner were both there, and they are two of the biggest names in comics ever. And it was just astounding that Richard Ray put together this comic convention with those two guys and Franz Cantor, an Australian guy. And I met Michael there. We were just finishing our high school, and we didn't know anybody who made comics, and we just happened to sit next to each other. So we became friends during the convention, but didn't like. I was probably too socially awkward to be able to figure out how to have a friendship that would go any further than sitting next to this guy for the weekend. But he had a camera and I didn't bring a camera, so he was taking photos. But I was working in a camera shop where you develop photos. So I told him, bring me your film, and I'll develop it for free if I can get a copy of the photos. So he came back in to get the photos, and we swapped phone numbers. And we actually did a couple of short stories together for a couple of like underground kind of mini comic-y sort of things in Sydney at the time. Bodine America printed one of them. Bodine and Jason Paulus, I think maybe they were both publishers of it. I think it was called. We did a couple of things for that. One thing for that. And then Michael was studying at the University of New South Wales, and the newspaper there, Tharunka, said that they had space for a comic strip if he wanted to contribute. Now, Michael doesn't draw, but he does write. And the only person he knew, I think, that could draw was me. So he rang me, or he contacted me, however it was, and said, do you want to do a comic strip together for Tharunka? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So we were trying to think of a strip that would appeal to students, tertiary students, and be a bit irreverent and funny, but also was talking about stuff that we wanted to talk about, and draw stuff that I wanted to draw. And we were coming up with pretty cliched ideas about like things like an alien comes and lands at the university and goes, oh, what is life on Earth all about? Somebody talk me through it, and it's like, oh man, that's a little bit not only cliche but very ham-fisted. And so we couldn't think of something, and I'm pretty sure we were about ready to just kind of go, oh, forget it, we can't think of something. But at that time, about that time, I went on a farm stay holiday, with my then girlfriend, now wife, in the other room, and
Shout out to Boots.
No, it's Bongo, not Boots. And you think I'm joking? You've met Bongo, right?
I have.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we went and stayed on this farm for about a week. And one of the days, the farmer loaded us into his four-wheel drive and said, "I'll take you around the farm and show you what's here." Because the rest of the time we're just in a farm, like a house that he built to just relax. And we were there with a whole bunch of friends, but we all went around in this four-wheel drive, and it struck me because there was not much on the farm other than some cattle, and I was looking at the cattle, and I was going, they look like they don't do much. They look like they're pretty bored. And I said to the farmer, I said, what do they do all day? Like, are they just resting? He said, you see how they're lying on the grass under that tree at the moment? I said, yeah. He said, well, they were doing that under that tree earlier. And that's about the size of it, right? They go from one tree to the other, they eat some grass in between, and they're done. And I went, wow, that's kind of boring. And the first, whatever it is, 4 pages or so of the first issue of Greener Pastures came to me right there in the four-wheel drive. The whole idea that you would have a spark of inspiration and stand on your hind legs and go and knock on the farmer's door and say, hey, I'm bored, can I come in? So that whole kind of thing came to me. We got home from the holiday, and I said to Michael, is this something we could work with? And I gave that idea to Michael, which he must have liked, because the next time we met up, he had, I'm sure I've got the printout in my files somewhere, but he came to me with a printout of what he'd written, which was like maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs of Trevor's entire life story, from beginning to end, and there is an ending, which we've always wanted to get to. And he said, how about this? And I went, man, that sounds fantastic. So that was when we started. And it was meant to be like a really long journey to get there, tell lots of funny stories in the meantime. And that's where the first 7 issues of Greener Pastures, or at the time, it was the comic strip, the first 12 little episodes of the comic strip, where they first came from. If you ever see the comic strip, and it was reprinted in a couple of places over the years, in an American comic called Hepcats, and in an Australian mini comic called Nervous Breakdowns. You'll see huge influence of Will Eisner in that, already at that kind of stage. But the story was interesting, but we expanded upon it quite a lot for the comic book itself. But Michael always had his eye on the really long story, which we never kind of got to, because we did 7 issues, we did 2 half issues, we did a special and a couple of mini comics and some shorts, but it really was only the beginning of Trevor's story. And then Michael and I both got married, not to each other, but to different people. We both had kids, and we both had careers, and it just got harder and harder to kind of get the comic done on a regular enough basis that I felt like I was doing a good service for the people who wanted to read it. And eventually just kind of petered out. So yeah, that's where number 7 and then 7.5 were the last issues that were done back in 1997. Shall I keep going? Shall I tell you about the new stuff?
Well, firstly, I just want to touch on, so to me, it seemed like a big deal for your comics to be in news agencies. Was that was that easy, hard? What, Like,
It
was
was,
that like a badge of honor to have your book in a newsagents?
from memory, it was actually ridiculously easy.
Right.
Right. Partly because we weren't the first to do it. There were others in front of us. I think really it was probably like Hairbutt the Hippo was. I think they were a little bit ahead of everybody else in regards to newsagent distribution, and a little bit ahead of him was Cyclone. So with Southern Squadron and Cyclone ComX and you know the individual comics that they started to publish. Of course, Tad before that with Dark Nebula. But newsagents in Australia at that time, you know, that's where you bought comics. If you didn't know of a specialty shop, and you know most people didn't know of, or you know didn't live near a specialty shop, a comic specialty shops, that's where you got your comics. So it was definitely a thing. So for a while there was quite a few Australian comics. Like at any one time, there was Greener Pastures, Platinum Grit, Bug and Stump, Hairbutt the Hippo, Issue 1's Zero Assassin and Cyberswine, Southern Aurora. I don't know, like at any time you could see all of those, right, in any newsagent. And Gordon and Gotch needed comics to distribute to newsagents. So if you rang up and you said, I've got a comic, they'd just go, cool. Like they didn't care what it was, what it looked like, how good it was or wasn't. They were just taking it. So that was the easy part. The hard part was trying to get them to take notice of their own sales figures. And if a newsagent sold 5 copies of number 1, they would only get like 2 copies of number 2, and then 4 copies of number 3, and then 20 copies of number 4. Like they just didn't worry about how to distribute their stuff properly. And we finally found out, I forget what, one of us, not me, but one of us kind of had the conversation with Gordon and Gotch that got the truth out of them, where the comic books and the soft porn were just space fillers for newsagents. So a news agency would want to have X amount of dollars worth of material every month, and that would be Woman's Weekly and New Idea and the TV Week and you know all those legitimate magazines, and then to make up the rest of the dollars, they would just throw porn and comic books at the newsagents. So they didn't care what the mix was and how many it was and all of that stuff. So on one hand, it was pretty easy, but on the other hand, it was also like not easy to wrangle or to guide. But the fact that we had newsagent distribution meant that we were printing up to 10,000 copies, which is like unheard of now to print that many. So that's why it's on newsprint in black and white, because that's the only way to print that many copies of a comic. And we would keep a couple of thousand for ourselves to sell at comic shops and comic conventions. The rest would go to newsagents. They would sell a percentage, 20, 30% of them, and the rest would go to be pulped. But we always made sure that we got a few of those back, like 1,000 or so back. You could pay to get some of them brought back, so that I had again more copies. And that's why I've still got comics in the garage that I can sell now. So at conventions the last couple of years, I've been selling them again, the old copies. We're starting to finally get to the end of the nice copies, the ones. And starting to get to ones that are a little bit more ragged, but I think I'm nearly out of them. Yeah.
I like when you sent me. I was lucky enough to get them sent to me, and having the newsagents stickers on there made me feel like I went and got them. Bit of history. So did we do wear? We did wear in terms of where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up? Here in Sydney. So I'm Sydney bred. In Ashfield is where we grew up. Ashfield and Croydon. I went to school in Ashfield and Croydon, primary school in Croydon, high school in Ashfield. I went to uni way out west at Penrith. So yeah, mostly Sydney based. Haven't really lived anywhere else. We lived in London for about 5 months, but that was just because we were backpacking.
And excuse me if I jump all over the shop. in terms of timeline. But I was curious too if you had a teacher, a specific teacher growing up that was. I feel like many of us creatives, we tend to have that one teacher amongst a sea of stop drawing and concentrate on the whatever, and then there'll be one who's kind of gets you, gets your weirdness, gets the where your heart is and all that sort of stuff. Is there a person like that? Perhaps a mentor? No teachers? No. Is that maybe why you strive to be that for other creators?
Oh, for others, yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. So I'm an educator. I lecture at tertiary level, mostly to animation students, mostly drawing and storytelling kind of subjects. And if I'm lucky enough to have a first trimester class, I often, not always, but I often do a little bit of a lecture about permission to be. Hey Nick, I often do a little bit of a little talk, not a lecture, a little talk about my struggle to be permitted to be an artist, and what it means to be given permission, and how I felt like I was never given permission, and I still struggle with it today. It's still like a huge struggle that I'm wasting my time drawing, and a lot of that I think is because I was never given permission, from anybody in a position of seniority in my life, like parents, teachers, etc. And I know that a lot of the kids that we get at the tertiary level are there despite what their parents want. A lot of their parents want them to be doctors and lawyers and like a dental technician, like what my dad wanted me to be. And they have to, really struggle to get to be, in the class that they want to be in. And I talk about how that might affect their artistic endeavors from that point, and that lack of permission can be an ongoing thing. So, and this is something I worked out for myself. And again, if I'd studied what it means to be an educator, maybe there's something in textbooks about this kind of thing. I don't know. But it took me, again, like decades to figure that out for myself. So I try to fast track that.
I'm only just working it now. You've blown my mind. I think that I have that same thing where I feel like I have to earn drawing time by doing so many things around the house or whatever to contribute properly before I then
feel like it's a guilty thing that you're doing, and which makes it an uncomfortable thing to do. It's like having a stone in your shoe while you're trying to run. You could be running so much faster if you didn't have to limp because of this big stone in your shoe. So I try to fast track that for a lot of my students and get them to understand what it means to have permission. And I try to give them the permission, even though it might be the first day they've ever met me. I'm already in a position of seniority, right? Of not seniority, but I'm the mentor there. I'm the teacher. I'm the one that they're already looking at going, you're going to teach me. And I try to make that one of the first things I do for them is say, I give you permission to be an artist. You need to embrace that, even if no one else has given you permission to be an artist. I give it to you, and if you embrace that, then we're well on our way. And I'll tell you what, I'm trying to kind of very much step around how I talk about that in class, because when I do it in class, I actually get pretty emotional and have to like really rein myself in. Otherwise, it can get a bit out of hand. So yeah.
Yeah, well, remember our safe word is pickles. So if because you're blowing my mind right now. Because I'm kind of going to want you to give me permission before we finish up.
Do. I'm hoping my mum's not watching, because parents like to follow us on Facebook and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't know if you're watching, Mum, but there you go. That's probably blown her mind as well.
Yeah, so my dad was an actor and a musician, but when he met my mum, there was a transitional period where she said, "Why are you lying down on stage when you sing?" He thought that was rock and roll, and I think it's rock and roll. But when it came time to buy a house and settle down, he legit put he played in the church choir and stuff, but he, for all intents and purposes, he put the guitar down and stopped acting and all that sort of stuff because it took time away from whatever. And so so I feel like I've got his creative gene or whatever, and I have an element of his you should settle down and focus on real things, and they're at odds. They've been at odds since I was 21 or something. I forget what my larger point was, but just that
that's the point. It's great. Yeah, it's a hard thing. I think it's a really hard thing. I know of just comic creators and cartoonists in this country who have got creative parents and have always been in a creative household, and how great that was for their upbringing. I tried to do this for my kids, and at times we kind of worry that have we equipped them to get a good enough job? I've equipped them for life. I hope we've equipped them for life. I'm pretty sure we have. I've got two really amazing adults as kids, but I always worry. How are they going to struggle to make a living? And it's what do you do when you're artistic? Are you going to struggle to make a living, or are you going to struggle with your mental health because you're not being creative? Like which one do you want to struggle with? Take your choice, But I think, like I said, Samuel's at the ABC, and is doing a creative job and still does his comics and is in a couple of bands on weekends and at nights and whatnot. So I think he's being creative, and Annabelle is a practicing artist and does her printmaking, and is also an educator, and is also a researcher. And so I think they're doing okay. I tried to show that balance, I guess, in my life, so that hopefully they can have the balance in theirs as well.
I'm very fortunate to my day job is to be an illustrator, but I noticed quickly I played in bands as well when I was younger, and I would play in cover bands. I played in an original band, and that was my pride and joy. I was a singer-songwriter, but then I played in cover bands to pay for the other band, and if you know what I mean. And so now I illustrate during the day, but I'm essentially a cover band artist during the day. Like I'm not drawing what I want to draw.
Yeah.
And do you struggle with that, with being a storyboard artist? You may be on a project that's not your project and you wish you were drawing Trevor, that sort of thing?
Oh my God. Yeah, I do. Like, the short answer is yeah, I do. Shall we move on? No, I'll tell you.
We can end it right there. Thanks so much.
Because the project in question is a big factor in that. So I worked on Happy Feet 2 in the storyboard department and then in the art department, and it was probably the best job I've ever had, in that I could actually stay at that job and I could actually go in every day, 5 days a week, and really be happy to wake up and go in the next day. I haven't had many jobs that do that. And part of that is because it was storytelling, and I was working with people who were definitely people to aspire to be as good as. I mean, at the top there was George Miller, who's an Academy Award-winning, writer, director. He made Mad Max Fury Road and etc. Like, every time we were in a meeting, it was astounding to just hear what he had to say about storytelling. But just working with Mark Sexton and Nick O'Sullivan and Shui Chan, in that art department, and a bunch of other people as well. But like they're like my closer comic book friends, and I've still got a really close friend, Nick Kachevsky, who's a writer director, who we met at that point as well all that time ago. So that was I guess it was like being in a cover band, but just loving the riffs every time you went on stage. But there are other times where I've had freelance work where somebody said, "I will pay you money to draw a comic," and I've just gone, "I can't do it. It's just like it's horrible. What are you trying to get me to draw? What you're doing?" And I'm drawing this marketing thing so that hopefully you'll make money, and it's like, I don't do it. I can't do it. So very, very seldom. So every so often, when somebody says, "Do you want to contribute to a comic?" Like most of the time, I don't have time, but most of the time it's also just I don't think I'm going to be able to bring myself to do it. But when Gary Proudly comes knocking and says, "You want to draw Talgard?" You go, "Yeah." And when Sizzle comes knocking and says, "Do you want to do a page for Sizzle in the multiverse?" I go, "Yeah," because that kind of stuff's fun. I've still got on my to-do list, I'm doing a Battery Hen page for
me too.
I've still got to do that. So things like that, like I can do, and most of the time it's the stuff that no one will pay me for. That's easy to draw. As soon as I have money, I'm going, "Oh, I don't think I can do it." So it's a weird thing. But yeah, I haven't done storyboards for a little while, but the Blinky Bill movie and Wolf Creek 2, I did boards for both of those as well, and they were all really good. It becomes a problem-solving exercise as well because it's someone else's script, and they all have their own style that they want to work in. But Happy Feet 2 definitely had like this Bible that was given to us that was like a reiteration of the Bible that they had for Happy Feet 1 about the visual style, and it's like it was really cool to understand why shots were done in a certain way, and why you're not allowed to do these kind of shots, and why you're not allowed to, and all that stuff. So it was a great time. So that was fine. But yeah, and any other kind of Anyway, that'll cover that, I think.
I just wanted to shout out the people in the comments. Keep them coming. We will. I've put up little ones here and there, but they're just non-conversation driving ones. We will hit the comments towards the end of the show, so feel free. There are a bunch of cool questions for Tim in the little chat thingy. So I want to double back now to, we did the then and now the now of putting out comics and how it's different. I found just even like reading comics that I went away for a while from reading comics and then came back, and I found it quite daunting to try and find out where Spider-Man was up to and whatever. And same with music. I went away and then I tried to come back, and the music scene was totally different. And I recognized nobody, and it was a different way of doing things. And was it daunting? Is it daunting to return to actively, putting out issues of Greener Pastures?
Yeah. So it was kind of simple. You would draw an issue. Because of my graphic design background, I knew how to speak to printers. You take it to the printer and you get it printed and send it off to Gordon and Gotch, keep some copies, send them to King's Comics and Phantom Zone and wherever. And so it was kind of straightforward because it was all physical, and there was pretty distinct methods to get it into the hands of the reader, right? And you're right, now it's kind of different. And I struggled for a while. Should I just put it online? Should I just have it online for free? And with the internet, and it's really hard. That's a really hard thing for me to come to terms with, giving it away for free. No, I don't make money out of it. You don't make money out of it one way or the other. So maybe it's cheaper not to print it and not make money out of it. But anyway, I'm trying to make money out of it. So I'm kind of, but then again, back in the probably not Napster days, but file sharing, when a comic was being torrented, right? There was, I forget who it is, but a reasonably well-known indie comic creator in America said, "I love it when people torrent my comics. Like, I don't lose any sales, and I watch the torrenting data, and anytime there's a spike torrenting my comic, there's a subsequent spike, however many months later, exactly the same in my sales. People get their free first hit, and then they come and want to buy everything else. So there's all of that like rational data, and I still can't bring myself to figure out if I can do that. So what I have been doing is trying to figure out and simplify what the methods of distribution are now, and I've come down, like everybody else, not everybody else, but a lot of people have, to the Kickstarter idea, right? That Kickstarter is a good, accepted, understood method of getting comics as a reader. I'm going to try to do something that not many people do, and that is to, instead of, I'm going to try to use it as a pre-order kind of system. So issue 8 is about to be kickstarted, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. But number 9, 10, and 11 are written. Number 12 onwards are all written as well, but number 12 was already drawn because that was the stuff that was in Gary Challender's Adventure Illustrated comic. And I want to get them out on a really regular basis. I want to get probably 4 out a year. And I want to do that as a bit of a Kickstarter pre-order system. So I'm being mentored in all of that by Darren Close, who's running the number 8 Kickstarter for me, and is always dropping truth bombs and wisdom on me all the time. And so I think between the two of us, we're trying to figure out how to make that work for me in the best way possible. I'm trying to keep it simple. I don't like, as a consumer, I don't like Kickstarters which I'm scrolling through and going, I don't even understand what I'm buying. All I want is a comic book. I'm trying to keep it simple. And number 8 is probably a little bit more complex or complicated than I probably normally would do going forward. But I'm going to, for number 9, 10, etc., going to be reasonably straightforward and like, here's a comic, buy it.
Yeah.
and see how we go. And that being said, I'm still looking at international distribution via comic shops, and that now is slightly different to what it was when I did it the first time, because all of my issues have already been through Diamond once. International distribution, and again, that's kind of easy if you just want to press the button and let it go on autopilot, but there's a lot of stuff you can do to try to boost sales, and I'm looking for advice on that from a lot of people. I have a few people that I message regularly and say, what do you think of this, and blah blah blah. But there's also people like Mel Briggs, who runs Impact Comics, that we had a good chat the other day over Messenger about indie comics and comic shops via distribution and how does that work. So there is a lot of kind of re-education. But that being said, like, I'm an old man, and I'm pretty entrenched in the methodology that we had the first time around, and I'm actually trying to replicate that as closely as possible, because it's pretty straightforward and simple in that it, like, you make the comic, you distribute the comic, you make the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I don't want to complicate matters too much. So some things have changed, but some things are just like the same. Make the pages, print the pages, get the pages into people's hands. That's what I'm trying to do.
And how do you go with the creator versus the marketer? Are you a natural marketer, or hate that bit, or?
I don't want to do it. You want to do it for me?
No. Well, no. This is. I'm doing a version of it now, I guess.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, this kind of stuff I love, but it's anything that takes me away from the drawing board. That's especially going forward. That's the big thing, right? Any day away from the drawing board is another page or half a page that hasn't been done. So I want to keep that to a minimum, and that's why I want to keep things as simple as possible. And again, God bless Darren Close with the way he's working with me for the Kickstarter. He often, will pepper his suggestions to me with, I know you don't want to be away from the drawing board, but blah blah blah. So he's got that in mind as well. And it's the most important thing. If I don't have pages, then I've got nothing to sell. If I don't have new pages, I've got nothing new to sell, and then why are we bothering at all? So I've got to get the pages done. So all of the marketing stuff, it'd be great if somebody else was doing it for me. But bit of a one-man band in regards to all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, yeah, we spend 50 to 100 hours making this thing. It really deserves. I mean, it deserves its time in the sun, and sometimes we're the only ones giving it that time in the sun. And so, really, you need to honor that time you spent by giving it another 50 to 100 hours of here's my book. And it's just, yeah, I just want to draw and tell stories, and then
but that's like
hand it to someone, and then bring the yeah.
Jack is the one that we all should look to, right? He would never even look at the printed comic, right? He would just draw a page and hand it on and go, I'm done with that one, right? What's next? It was all about making the pages, because he was part of a machine which, to some extent at certain points of his career, just ground him down to a nub. But he was part of a machine that meant, make the pages, we'll take care of, getting them into the reader's hands. And, because of that, that's how come he's got like 1 billion pages in print, so it's...
I wonder though if he wasn't,
spending the same amount of time getting the pages out as it takes me to make the pages in the first place. But that's where I'm at the moment.
I mean, would you be happy to be in the Marvel DC machine where you just make pages of someone else's character and then they go off and?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But I would be happy to have enough success with Greener Pastures that I could have an assistant, like a marketing assistant or an admin assistant that would take care of all of that stuff, so that 4 of my 5 days could be just drawing, and 1 would be just making sure everything else was running, and then maybe that would only be a half a day, and maybe then it would just be like a half an hour every day, just to make sure that that's all happening. That's I don't often articulate that. I don't think I've probably even articulated that to myself, but I mean that would be the best solution, right? That I've got the script from Michael, and I just get to draw, scan, clean it up, put together maybe not even have to put together the InDesign document and the PDF. Maybe somebody else could do that as well. And have them ring up the distributors and the printers, and
I mean we need to all team up and work in a big studio, and we all chip in and pay the interns, and they all put the books together. But it would never happen. But it's nice to dream about. Okay, so we've done who, we've done what, we've done when. I want to save why till the end, because I think why is the more challenging one. We've done where. Now, before we talk about the Kickstarter, I want to just spend a little bit of time on how, because there's a few things I find interesting, and that's I've only drawn from other people's scripts a handful of times. I normally just write and draw for myself. I'm curious, how have you ever written your own stuff? How do you break down a script from Michael? How loose are his scripts? How tight? There was a question in there somewhere, I'm sure.
So working with Michael, let's talk about that first. Mike, I don't know if Michael will watch this back later. I'm sure I've said this to him, but usually Michael's scripts, whether it's a short story or a 20-pager or a chapter in our big graphic novel ending to Greener Pastures, always starts with page 1, panel 1, blah, 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 panel 2, blah, 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 page 2, blah, 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 and by the time it gets to page 4 and 5, the panel descriptions or the panel breakdowns are disappearing. And then by the time he gets to page 8, the page numbers have gone, and he stops telling me what page, because he's in the flow of writing, right? This is what my assumption is. So he's not worrying about pages, but he also he just goes, why am I telling Tim how to break this down? He knows how to break it down. So unless Michael has a very specific part of storytelling or imagery that he needs page breaks or a certain way of paneling, he leaves it all up to me. So I'm the storyteller telling his story, right? Telling the script that he's written. I'm the storyteller. So, you know, we all, as comic creators, we know this. I'm the director, the actor, the lighter, the cinematographer. You know, all of that stuff is pretty much up to me. Most of the time, Michael never tells me to change anything, really. Most of the time, it is on a spectrum between that's exactly what I imagined. I can't believe that you got it without me even telling you, to that's so much better than what I thought it was going to look like, right? So it's just because of the way that we work. It's always been that way. So we're pretty lucky with each other in that regard. So I get a script from Michael, and I do thumbnails. I don't know if I can get any here.
Just don't do me a favor and don't knock your internet cord.
Yeah.
I've used up all my material at the start of the show.
Yeah, my God. One day you'll tell me. Oh, actually, I'll have a listen and listen back to what it was that you were yammering on about while I was off in limbo. No, that's seriously. I've got my thumbnails here somewhere. Here. So, I mean, for Greener Pastures number 8, which is a jam issue, I've actually got an awful lot more material than I normally would have, because I was making sure that other artists understood everything that they needed to understand. But I get a script from Michael, and then I do thumbnails. So
I think I can click a button.
Oh, cool. Click that button. So Greener Pastures number 8, you see at the top corner there. Version 2. So that would be my second run through of thumbnails. So this pages 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4. No, 1, 2, and 3. Number 1 is penciled by Dave Sim. Number 2 is penciled by Katie Houghton Ward, Katie Hollywood. And page 3 is penciled by Chris Wall. So they are my thumbnails. So whether I'm working for myself or for other people, that's how I do everything. I just do thumbnail breakdowns. And you'll see, there's that's the page, right? That's here is like the page breakdown. But then I've got a new idea, a better idea, and I do it really small, right? Because I've never even draw this big again when it's just trying to fix an idea. Same here. That panel's no good, so I redid it as this one here, and that's my method, right? It's got little balloons all over it, ready for the dialogue. I put little A, B, C, make sure I've got enough room for all the dialogue, and that's pretty much the method of working with almost any writer. Really, I did the same thing with Gary Proudly for Talgard. That's how I work. So if I'm writing for myself, which I've done a little bit of, not a lot, but a little bit of. So for a while, I thought I might do a kids comic, and I wrote a bunch of stories from a bunch of prompts that I wrote. I wrote a bunch of prompts, and then I wrote short stories out of that. And each one of those, or a lot of those, had very different methods of doing the writing. So most of the time I was writing with thumbnails. I would write visually. So being a visual storyteller, that was mostly how I tackled that. I would start with a page shape and start with a splash panel and start, doodling what I think would be a cool thing to happen in this story. So most of the time, that's pretty much how that worked. Writing dialogue outside that thumbnail and crossing it out and rewriting it and trying to figure out what good dialogue would be. I had one story. I had one story that was a time travel conundrum sort of story, which was really hard to figure out how to make sure everything fitted. So that one I wrote as dot points, just where everybody was at every point, to make sure that it all worked. And then I took those dot points and started doing the thumbnails. So that, yeah, that's probably the two main ways. I don't start with typing out a script. Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I don't like the idea of typing out a script. So, but that being said, I'm already kind of playing with a couple of ideas for what I'll do after Greener Pastures, in 60 years' time, and and again, they're reasonably big stories. So them, I'm going to have to figure out like what the arcs are in a really large sense, and start to, like a thumbnail, like a big thumbnail, and then kind of refine those down into smaller arcs, etc. So that I can already see is going to be different. But the way that I work now, that's pretty much that should probably cover it. And then I take that and I draw it up onto A3. So that this is actually what I inked for issue 8. This is not my pencils. This is Dave Sims' pencils. But I inked over the top. So I blue lined that. So these are this is the final art for those 3 pages of thumbnails I just showed you. So that's Katie Hollywood's page there, and Chris Wall's page there. Normally I would draw a pencil on board, and that's the cover. You can still see a lot of the pencils behind, because I haven't rubbed out those pencils because I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to put a background on it or not. Oh, you'd think I'd have that. So yeah, pencil on board, and it's graphite pencil. It's not blue pencil. You'd think I'd wake up to that after 50 years and draw in blue lines, so I wouldn't have to erase things. But I've still erased things. And then I ink with a brush and a pen, a dip pen and a brush. Good thing you just happen to be in my studio. Hey, that's my brush. It's a where can I put it so you can actually see it there? It's a Chinese calligraphy brush. That's my brush of choice. I really like it because once it's charged with ink, it actually holds ink for a long time. You don't have to keep on dipping it. So I can ink sometimes for 20 minutes without having to re-dip that brush.
Wow.
It's got a super fine point, and it'll give you a really fat point, a really fat line as well, without having to swap brushes. So I really like that. Every so often, I think maybe my hand gets tired and I go to a dip pen, usually a G pen, which is like specially made for manga artists. They're blunt pretty quickly. They kind of get blunt, after using them for a short time. But they're pretty good. They're very flexible, and you can press on them pretty hard and they won't break. I think I've got one. Excuse my ass. Oh yeah, here's one. So that's that.
Oh yeah.
So just a dip pen. So that's a pretty modern dip pen. I know all my heroes have probably been using like a Gillette, or is that how you pronounce it? Or
yeah, we have been, yeah.
Yeah, cool. You'll have to send me some, or a Hunt 105, which have got a much finer point. But after using this one, which is built for manga artists, you just kind of attack the page and you can press pretty hard. I bought a pretty expensive nib, a Hunt 105, and forgot that they're really fragile, and pressed just as hard as I would with one of these, and it just went bling, broke, and I went, oh, right, that's that one done.
Do you have a different approach to inking your stuff versus inking other people's pencils?
No, not really. I don't think. No, So ComX is a really time-consuming activity, right? Once you're on the page, like, it just takes time. And I know the writing takes time as well, but it just takes so long to lay out a page and then to pencil it and make sure your pencils are right before you go to the inking stage. And then the inking is meticulous. For me, it is anyway, like, not overly meticulous, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a precision activity for me. So all of this stuff is time consuming. And if you're not going to enjoy it, then why are you spending all of this time hunched over a drawing board. So I need to make sure that each phase of the activity is exciting. So that thumbnail session is storytelling and problem solving and trying to be creative in that regard. And then on the final art, I work very loosely to begin with a really blunt pencil. I don't have one here. I'm not really set up at the moment. Anyway, a really fat blunt pencil so that I can't do detail. And I usually stand up while I do it. So I've got a really kind of loose layout of my page based on the thumbnail. And then I'll go in with a sharp pencil, like a 0.5 or a 0.7 clutch pencil, and put in all the detail. And that's like the drawing part. That's the, like, it's so, you know what it's like when you're drawing. It's such a great thing to do to get the foreshortening right and the anatomy right, and like, so anytime you kind of feel like you've gotten something right, you go, oh, I'm successful today.
Yeah.
And that's the drawing part of it. But I try not to be too like I don't be too descriptive about line. I know where the line is, and I'm very precise in my penciling about where the line might be, but I don't describe it any more than that, because I want to have fun at the inking stage. And at the inking stage, that's all about how thick and thin the line will be, getting that variation in line, thinking about, am I going to do a hatch or a cross hatch, or how much feathering will I put? So every stage, I make sure that there's creative problem solving to have and fun to have. Oh, thanks, Stephen. You're very kind. So yeah, it's every stage has got to be that for me. Otherwise, you know, it would, like, you'd shoot yourself after drawing all day and not enjoying it, right? So
Yeah.
so that's, yeah, I try to do that. So you asked me if I have a different approach for other people. I don't. You know, I did a you know, Inktober. Inktober came out of this desire to remember what it's like to draw in ink, because most animators draw digitally now. So this animator said, I'm going to draw in ink for a month, and I'm not even going to pencil first. I'm going to go straight in with ink. So that was like the genesis of it. And we all have our own take on what we want to do with Inktober. And one year, the only year I've ever done Inktober, yeah, that's the one. I picked a different artist every day and printed out some printed out some blue lines of some of my favorite artists. Will Eisner, like I said before, Will Eisner, Jim Steranko, Paul Gulacy, Gary Challoner, and I just inked each person for like a half an hour to an hour every day, just to see what that would be like and see what I could learn from that. And yeah, I didn't try to change my inking style, but it was a really different different experience to be inking Jack Kirby, you know, compared to inking Tim McEwen, because like his understanding of three-dimensionality is like, you know, levels above mine. And it's like, it was really interesting to kind of to do 2 days of Jack Kirby, and you know, I was really looking forward to inking Frank Miller, and it was just awful. I just couldn't understand how to do it. On the period that I picked like an early 80s one, and I probably should have picked some other time. It didn't suit my inking style at all, because I like to go along the limb, and everything that he had was like around the limb. So I needed to change my inking style, and I didn't, and it ruined it. So that was what I learned from that. So yeah, like that was a really fun kind of month to do that. They're still all on my Instagram from about, I don't know, 5 years ago now, if you want to scroll back that far.
Yeah,
I've got
right.
little time lapses and the final product.
Well, let's spend some time talking about the Kickstarter that's cracking, and then we'll smash through people's comments, and then we'll end on the why of it all.
Okay.
But kickstarter.greenerpasturescomic.com is the link. So give the people the spiel.
So number 7, Greener Pastures number 7 was the last issue back in 1997. Number 8 was written and thumbnailed, but we never got any further with it. And I've wanted for a long time to get back to Greener Pastures, and every time I was ready to get back to it, Michael was not. Every time Michael was ready, I was not. We just couldn't get into sync. But we're in sync now, and he's written 3 brand new issues set in the 1990s, which is when we have to have the story. It's not like Superman where you just set it today. It's got to be set in the 1990s. That's when it was set. So number 8 takes place immediately after number 7, and in fact 5, 6, 7 and 8 are probably within 48 hours of each other. It's incredible. There's like 100 pages there that are like a 48-hour period, but it's still a really good jumping on point, because you really get to see what Trevor's like, because this is the issue where he gets a new his love interest for the first time. You definitely get to see what Colin is like. So Trevor and Colin are really like the Abbott and Costello of this comic, and their flatmate Caesar. He's hilarious as well. So we've got a really good jumping on point. And I thought, if we're going to start with number 8, if we're going to or relaunch with number 8, it would be a really interesting bridge to use the old script with my new art. I thought that would be cool. And then I thought, you know what? We're going to be coming out of nowhere, and I want a lot of people to get excited about this besides myself. And the idea occurred to me that we'll do a jam issue. So every page of the comic is penciled by a different artist, except for 6 pages that are done by me. Those 6 pages are all the new love interest page, so I kind of just grabbed all of those for myself. But every other page is drawn by a different artist, and then I inked and lettered the whole thing to give it some kind of uniformity.
Yep.
Everybody who's read it says it takes maybe 2 or 3 pages to get used to that, and then you just go with it. Because I've got like really Bigfoot cartooning on one page, opposite quite hyper realistic on the opposite page. But it just carries through. That's partly because my inking, I didn't overly, at no point did I try to change anyone's art. I just used, like we were just discussing, I just used my inking style like I normally would, and I just use hatching where I normally would and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of smooths it out. But again, it's a really fun kind of issue to get back into it. But I'm hoping that that will be like an added extra interesting aspect to bring new readers to Greener Pastures. So one of my all-time heroes in comics is Dave Sim, and he said yes when I invited him, and he took the opening page, which meant that he also did the title lettering, and he's really, he's well known for his lettering as well. So that was astounding. Gary Challoner is another one of my heroes, so he's done a page. But there's also like Nicholas Scott, John Sommer-River, Jeffrey Cruz, Dean Rankin. I think he was the first page I inked, and he did his almost Simpsons kind of style, and to try to bring that kind of a little bit closer towards a style that you have with a flowing brush. That was so much fun. Ashley Wood, who is an amazing Australian comic book artist and toy maker, his page was incredible to ink. Absolutely astounding. Probably, if people ask me what my favorite page is, probably that one. And I probably learned the most from that one as well. So that's what the book is. And it's funny, right? It's called Sweet, Sweet Release, the story, the episode. But the working title back in 1997 was Sex and Violence. That was like, this is what the title is, Sex and Violence. So you kind of understand what the story might be about. This is not a comic that you give to your 10-year-old son or niece or nephew. But it's all in fun as well. Like there's nothing like over the top, I don't think. Close to it, but not quite over the top. So yeah, I think it's a great jumping on point. The Kickstarter starts in just over a week on the 8th of February. One of the really cool things, I don't really have any here to show you, I don't think, but one of the really cool things is we're offering the comic, but we're also offering a pencils only version as well, to show what the pencils look like before they all got McEwenified by my inking. So there's a pencils only version that you can get as well, and it's not being sold at a premium. It's being sold for $10 or whatever it is, $12 like the regular edition, but you can get both of those. And I think that's cool, and that's probably as complex as the thing is really getting. There's regular edition, the pencils only edition, and then a sketch cover edition, which you can either buy blank or with a drawing from me on it. And then also you can get all of the back issues. So every back issue will be available, 1 to 7, 4.5, 7.5, the extravaganza. They're all the back issues, and they're all available. There's a very limited quantity that are in really good nick, so they're going to go fast. And then there's another quantity that are pretty average, kind of in quality, as in they're pretty roughed about. So yeah, that's the Kickstarter. It's my first ever Kickstarter, so I'm shitting bricks, so I'm hoping it'll go off. We're still trying to nail down the final few details on it. Even right up until just before we got on tonight, I was conversing with Darren about a couple of bits and pieces. So yeah, I'm very excited. Like, this is the beginning of the rest of it. Like I said, number 9, 10, 11 are all written for 1990s era stuff, and then what's that, 9, 10, 11, and the number 12 onwards is set in the 2020s, and Trevor's a middle-aged bull instead of a young bull.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so you can click the link. Well, you can't click it, you have to type it in, but this guy here, kickstarter.greenerpasturescomic.com. Click the notify me now thingy to be notified when it launches. Now, don't be shy if you can't afford to back. It's crazy times. Money is scarce. A share, a like, all those sorts of things. Maybe grab the PDF is a cheaper option sometimes. Some people sometimes, sorry, I could only get the PDF. I'm like, no, we love that. Please get all the PDFs. So yeah, go forth, check it out. So let's smash some of these questions and comments, if you don't mind, Tim.
Yeah.
So we'll stick to about 1,000 words or less per one. See how you go. So we covered the initial idea of Trevor. Will Eisner, say no more? Wow, a legend. Here's a good question though from Ryan Vella. Hey, I'm sure I saw Tim's art in a strip ad for a brothel in Penthouse. I've always wondered about that. That's so punk. Was it you?
No, it wasn't me. Yeah, it was me. Pickles.
Yeah, awesome. Earlier you were talking about porn and comics, and I was like, you just that's my life's subtitle. That, and I've never had Dave Sims work on one of my comics, but I've eaten plenty of dim sims while reading comics. So
fantastic.
Hey Dave, you can see your art right behind me on my scarce shelves.
Yeah.
Steve says Greener Pastures made it all the way to the mid-North Coast newsagents, the only way to get local comics outside of the city.
Yeah, cool. So it was such a great way to get fans all over the country. We were so lucky to be out and about at that time.
And then art influences. I see a bit of Will Eisner's art style in Tim's.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely Will Eisner. And it's kind of interesting. I must have always known, but from the first time I saw Gary Challender's work, it impacted like so strongly, and I think I knew by the time he was like into the second or third issue of Cyclone, that's how I wanted to ink. That was like the style of inking I wanted, and all of his storytelling, the way he drew, the way he kind of combined pretty realistic drawing with cartooning as well. All of that stuff was like really ringing my bells. So I think he's a bigger influence on me than I ever realized until just recently. Both in my inking, but also in just the way I draw character. Just, and because I think also because he's a graphic designer, like he had this amazing design sense on a page and within a panel and within the shot, just all of that. He's possibly, you know, one of the three big influences for me, and I think I've only just realized that recently. The fact, I think I've said this to Gary, I'm not sure, but the fact that I was in his publication in Adventure Illustrated, where I was sandwiched, Greener Pastures was sandwiched between two Challoner stories, the Jackaroo Squadron stuff at the front, Cyclone Force stuff at the front, and the Red Kelso stuff at the back, and Greener Pastures in the middle. I can remember the day where I was looking at my computer at the PDF proof to make sure that everything was okay, just before it went to print, and like I stopped flicking through the pages and I went, this is insane that I'm in his comic that's just not on, and like everything's right with the universe at this minute. This is really amazing. So that was a big deal. But definitely Eisner. I don't think I ever really was drawing enough when I was fully into Steranko to really get that through my art terribly much. But the other really big influence is Dave Sim. Definitely, I was so enamored with Cerebus once I discovered it back in the late 80s, and the period from the late 80s up, like that was like issue 80 something to about issue, I don't know, 150, 200. That was like that kind of storytelling was so, and the fact it was black and white and the amount of detail, that was also like, can I draw like that? I can't, but there's an awful lot of influence. And his lettering, definitely, if only I try and I fall short so much, but his lettering is a huge influence on what I want to do as well.
That was 1,712 words, so you've failed that one. What comic did Tim collect growing up?
I collected everything. Stephen, you were talking about how newsagents was the only way to get comics. It was the same for me for a long time. So every Saturday morning, every Saturday or Sunday morning after my paper run, delivering papers, I would then do another like hour or hour and a half on my bicycle to all of the newsagents within riding distance and buy whatever I could find, because nothing was ever one issue after the other. But if you want to go back, you know, before I discovered Cyclone Comics and Will Eisner and Cerebus, if you want to go back, it was the Uncanny X-Men, it was the Avengers, it was Daredevil and Iron Man, all of that stuff. I loved Romita Jr. and Bob Layton on Iron Man, and Perez is like one of my gods to me as well. Like whatever he was on, I was buying. Whatever Byrne was drawing, I was buying. So all of that stuff, and then I would just buy whatever else I could as well, because it was hard to find comics on a regular basis anyway.
My collection from that time is very sort of like 2 Silver Surfer issues and then a big 5-issue gap, and then there's another 3, because it was just, you're at the mercy of what your local news agency has. And I would ride my bike to several news agencies, but yeah, my collection's got so many holes from those days because I just wanted comics. So I would buy whatever was there. Punisher, done. Batman, sweet. All right, so this is Andrew. This is when we were talking about the permission of it all. So Andrew understands the battle. We are brought to you tonight by Aussieverse. Omnibo is the head honcho over at Aussieverse.
Yeah.
G'day, gents, from Steve. Hello. Yo from Claudia.
Yeah.
Who stole all of Rob's comics and painted the shelves white? Yeah. So by Drink and Draw on Friday, my comics will be, but it's the whole thing. I've moved rooms and whatnot. Thanks, Alex. How much of a pain in the ass is your Kickstarter manager?
A big pain in the ass.
Yeah, it must be handy having someone sort of take that that sort of stress off your shoulders a little bit.
He's
Which
a
goes to what
wonderful
we're saying. Yeah.
Wouldn't have it any
Yeah.
other way.
Digging the thumbnails from Steve. I think I might have popped that one up. This is Sean Craik. He does a comic book called Blade Whip, saying evening trendsetters. His ink style is fantastic. I think we touched on that. Did you ever ink Sal Buscema or John Buscema?
You know what? It's funny, those two brothers, right? There was a period where one of the comics that was actually I would get regularly from the newsagent was the black and white Yaffa reprints of Marvel Team Up by Sal Buscema and whoever was inking it at that time. And I got so into Sal. And the Defenders by Sal Buscema, the black and white reprint of the Defenders Avengers crossover, one of the first ever kind of crossovers like that. I just so love Sal. But it's really hard to find pencils by Sal on the internet. It's very hard to find them. I've downloaded a few, but very hard to find. And now it's hard to find time to just sit and ink someone for fun. So no, I've never done Sal or John. John, I know John is an amazing artist, but he doesn't interest me as much as Sal does. Ooh, I don't know. I'm probably like
Controversial.
splitting everybody who's watching into Sal and John territory now.
Yeah, we're about to go viral on Twitter with these controversial opinions. Joe Sinot, my favorite inker from Steve.
I think there's a huge influence of Joe. Thanks for bringing that up, Stephen. There's a huge Sinot influence in me. My favorite comic, you're bringing back all the memories, was that period of the Fantastic Four from like the late probably 180 to 200 until Byrne took over, right? And then Byrne is also obviously a favorite. But that whole run, that later run of Sinot, over Perez, who else was doing it at that point? Keith Pollard and Joe Sinot. And I've got a lot of Sinot in my inking. Obviously nowhere near as good as Joe Sinot, but yeah, amazing stuff.
This question I'm going to take.
Hi, Stephen. Very astute. Stephen, angry.
I want to take.
I was going to say you should have said on this side of the screen when the internet wasn't working.
Yeah, but I want to take this question seriously because I wanted to touch on it earlier, but it just missed my moment. Have you and Michael ever had a creative disagreement? And if so, how have you solved it? If the answer is no, that's fine too.
No, we have not huge. In fact, number 8, there was a few pages because he rewrote some of it because it's now however many years later, and he wanted to reword it. And in fact, that's why Lewis Purdy is actually the writer on it. Michael's not the writer on number 8. Lewis Purdy is. And we just talk it through. Like again, you're going to get more than 1,000 words out of me, but we're working on a short film script for a live action short film for Greener Pastures that we're actually in production of. If I could show you the sculpt for the prosthetics mask, which is
I was going to say CGI or person in a suit. It's a person in a suit.
Yeah. We just looked at that like Wednesday week ago. The prosthetics, like the sculpt, but it's been hard work to try to get to a script for a short film, which has got to be different to what we do in the comic. So we just he gives and takes as much as I do. It's pretty amazing. So yeah.
Just we are in the winding down period, but I just want to touch on that quickly. It's been a few years since I read Greener Pastures 1, but I believe Trevor is amongst regular looking cows, like they're drawn regular, and then Trevor has a cartoonish, the large sort of so prosthetics wise, does he look like a legit real cow standing up, or have you gone the stylized look?
We've got I mentioned Nick Kachevsky earlier, a friend of mine, writer director, and he's spearheading this. And we're using a place called Makeup Effects Group, or MEG for short. and they're award-winning, world-class prosthetics people.
Wow.
We really left it up to them to figure out. We gave them all the material, and left it to the people who know how to make live action to try to make sure that this works the best.
Yeah.
Make him a cartoon character was not going to work. I kept on talking about that first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie with the animatronic. I was going, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do that? Because
yes, it's legit what I was thinking when you first said
100% believable as far as I'm concerned. But this is not goofy like that. So I don't think that would work. On top of that, we can't do all that animatronics. It really is prosthetics, and the movement of the actor underneath the latex is what's going to make everything move. We talked about the 1960s Planet of the Apes movies and TV show, and they call that like a hamburger kind of mouth, where the mouth is way in here because the snout is out there. Do we do that? How do we get around that? So we're trying to, we have to keep the snout short, which is basically what we're coming to that, so we can still move lips, both upper and lower lips. So these are the kind of things that you need to battle with. You can't have huge kind of cow eyes or cartoon eyes. You can't. There's still a person's eye behind there, and we're talking about ways that we can kind of accentuate that. And Nick, the writer-director, is talking about things that I don't think about, because, Trevor in the comics I draw has got these huge brows, right? And the eyes are pretty set deep in there. He said, but if we light that, we're not going to see the eyes at all, and that's where the acting is. So we're going to have to not have the brow out quite as far as you normally would have. So, this is why, like, we're there to discuss things, but they're the guys who know what they're doing.
Wow, I mean, you picked a crazy character to then try and live action. Yeah, full on. Omnibo signed up to be notified upon launch.
Thank you.
I think he's telling other people to do it. Well, hopefully he did it too. Yeah, love hearing Tim's enthusiasm. Can't wait for the Kickstarter.
Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll look to back you for a physical copy when it goes live. Will be my introduction to the series. Thank you, Josh. Nice. What made you quit? Well, that's a pickles. Sorry, I should have read ahead. Looking forward to seeing the penciled and inked versions. Fantastic idea.
Thanks, man.
Sinot inked a bit of Selby Shemmer. Sal is my favorite. Selby Shemmer did a run of Amazing Spidey, and seeing him adapt his style to the popular styles of McFarlane and Larson was fascinating. Darren is a monstrous fan of Eric Larson, I do believe. Can I pick my inkers or what?
Very good.
And then Dave died. Tim, thanks for showing us your process, thumbnails, and drafts. Also interested in finding out where I can get one of your inking brushes.
It's been a little while since I bought one, but I'm sure that they're still in business. I buy them online from Will's Quills. I think it's willsquills.com or .com.au. I can't remember. And you look up calligraphy, Chinese calligraphy brush. Probably buy a medium to start with. I use a medium and a large, but the medium is slightly easier to control. Or hit me up, Dave, and I'll send you some links. Happy to do that.
And then last one from Steve, short film Greener Pastures. You heard it here first. You're damn straight. Chinwag, breaking news, breaking the internet, all that sort of whatnots. All right, Tim. So this question in my mind is one of the more serious of the who, whats, and the whens. But you take it as light or as seriously as you would like. Why?
I don't know. Yep. I think we were touching on that earlier when I said I was drawing comics before I knew what comics were. And if people had given me permission to be an artist, maybe it'd be out of my system by now, and I'd be a very wealthy businessman who sells widgets or something instead of somebody who's sitting here at a drawing board still trying to draw comics. But I don't know why. I actually had a job last year, which was a managerial job. It was the first time I've ever had a job that was absolutely no creativity whatsoever. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand it, and I had to quit. So there's definitely something that won't let go. So instead of fighting it, Anne-Marie and I are like letting it be the thing that it is, and we're going to see how long we can let that be. And we've got a plan to go for well, as long as we can, but for years, right? So if you get on board now, you get all of the old issues and you'll get the brand new number 8. But like I keep on saying, I've got new ones in the works already, and they're the best writing that Michael's ever done, and the artwork is like I'm excited to be drawing young Trevor, 1990s Trevor, as well as the 2020s Trevor. The work I was doing in Gary's Adventure Illustrated, like I was so so it's almost an out of body experience. Like I'm putting pages up on my wall as I draw them. Okay, did I really draw that? Because it's pretty good. Have I really kind of? I know I'm still not as good as any of those people that I'm talking about. But like I'm better than I was a year ago. So I'm hoping that this is all happening as I hit a really good stride, and I'm hoping that I get fast enough as well, because I'd really love to be releasing 6 issues a year, but 4 issues a year will probably be what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, 4 issues a year is a monster effort. So I wish you Godspeed and whatnot. You can do it. Yeah, so for one final time, there be the link. Go forth, do some clicking. It would be much appreciated. So that's pretty much our show for tonight. I do believe Leigh Chalker will be back in this seat, his version of this seat, in a fortnight. I believe this show is fortnightly. Drink and Draw is this Friday. Back, we're drawing Devils and Demons. So come along, send in your art, send in your questions, all that sort of good stuff. I do need to, thank you to Steve. Cheers, Spedsy and Tim, taking the time out to chat. No, thank you. Now we are.
Can I just say thanks a lot,
Please.
Speds? Thanks for having me. Thanks for stepping in for Leigh. And Leigh, I hope everything's cool where you are. Miss you greatly. We'll catch up again some other time. We'll have a chat some other time. And thanks to ComX for continuing to, Sizzle and ComX for continuing to support all of this kind of stuff and helping us get our comics out there, and for us to have a platform to talk about them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to Leigh for trusting me with his baby while he was out. It wasn't able to be postponed. Tonight was the night, so Leigh asked me to step in, and he hosted Drink and Draw once, filling in for me, and more than happy to return that favor. So yes, he did tell me to say a few things. ComX, of course, the ComX.shop. We are streaming on the ComX network. It does cost money to stream all this good stuff. So if you could at some point maybe go to ComX.shop, check out some of the comics for sale there from creators all over Australia. And remember, community is unity. And also we are streaming on Aussieverse. So big thanks to Bo and the team at Aussieverse for giving us those extra eyeballs. And always remember that Aussieverse is for life. And I believe that's all the hand gestures I had to do. We'll see. I'll check the comments from Sis and Leigh and Bo, but I think I nailed it. Hopefully, we'll see.
Nailed it.
If not, I've got another hand gesture ready for them. All right, now I have to click a thing. Just let me find it, and then we'll head home. Tim, thank you so much. This was a daunting task, but we have chatted before. We've broken bread before, as they say in medieval times. We may be heirs to a kingdom or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's a thing. You made it very easy. So even when you weren't here, I felt at ease knowing you would soon return. All right.
Thanks for having me. You did great.
No, thank you. All right, man. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye,
and bye for now.
This show is sponsored by the ComX shop. Check out comx.cx for all things ComX and find out what ComX is all about.